Walter, just wanted to thank you for being here, and obviously this is my second time being here. It's such an important opportunity to examine and look at what's taking place in Ukraine. I want to thank the ambassador, very inspiring speech. Couldn't agree more with you, and I think it really is a sort of perfect segue to the conversation that we're having with some really distinguished panel. For all of you, my name is Jonathan Katz. I'm a senior fellow at the German Marshall Fund of the United States, and I'm also a co-chair, along with Oris, of the Friends of Ukraine Network, which is part of the U.S.-Ukraine Foundation, the Democracy and Civil Society group, and then also Oris and I also chair the Transatlantic Task Force on Elections and Civil Society in Ukraine. And as you can imagine, this year has been a particularly busy year, both in terms of elections, but also in terms of Ukraine's reforms. And I had an opportunity to be out in Ukraine for the first round of the presidential elections with NDI. I think all of us sitting across the table here would agree that it was truly a free, fair, and transparent election within international standards. But I'm going to let the real experts on elections speak to these issues. And obviously this is a particularly important time for Ukraine. And I think when I think about this panel, I think about uncertainty in terms of what comes next, in terms of a parliamentary election that may or may not take place in July, but also about a new president that is thinking about next steps on policy internally, reforms, democracy, governance, rule of law. And this panel today is going to be looking at those very questions of where Ukraine is today, also where they need to go in the future, and also looking at the upcoming election as well, and the motivations, desires of the Ukrainian people as they look at next steps. And one thing I did want to emphasize too, how important it is, and I'm glad we're having this in Washington today, and by the panelists who are coming after us too, is how important it is for the United States at this moment, U.S. government, and supporters of Ukraine, the EU and others, to really strengthen support for Ukraine, and I think a very sensitive and transformational moment. And I think if there's anything that we sort of get out of these conversations is that obviously change in Ukraine will be created and will be pushed and moved by the Ukrainian people and government, but the support of partners is essential. And I think the ambassador laid out all of the challenges, internal challenges and external challenges. And let's we not forget that there'll be an upcoming meeting between President Trump and Mr. Putin upcoming, and we'll be seeing, certainly the outcome of that, but also some regional challenges too that could impact Ukraine, including Moldova. And the ambassador mentioned the other regional challenges, not to exclude the ongoing conflict in the East. So with that said, I want to turn to our panelists. I want to turn to Steve Nix with IRI, and then Katie Fox with NDI, and then my colleague Oris to bring up the end of this conversation. And Walter will try to do our best, and we have such excellent timekeepers out front that we will definitely keep on time, and we know we have panelists coming up behind. So Steve, could I turn to you first? And it just because of brevity, for all of you, just to take a look, everybody's bio is in this pamphlet. And so, but I'm pretty certain when I look across this room, it's a lot of familiar faces that have been here previously or are working on Ukraine. And I think Steve, Katie, and Oris are some of the most well-known faces on Ukraine in this region in Washington, D.C., and have had extraordinary leadership, both from NDI, IRI, and also Oris with the Helsinki Commission, that I didn't feel like it was necessary to read the full bios. But please do so when you get a chance. And Steve, if I could hand it over to you.